This is one of the most hostile places on Earth. Fought over by armed Islamist groups, pirates and bandits, Somalia is a country with no law and order, ravaged by famine, armed Islamist groups and pirates. A no-man's land where an armed escort is essential at all times. Our film tells the story of a 700-kilometer journey across the Somali desert in the search of a rumor that won't die. Mysterious containers filled with toxic liquid that were dumped along Somalia's coastline. After 17 hours on the road, we reach Lidan, a fishing village where a few families eke out a living on the desolate and windswept shoreline. The December 2004 tsunami destroyed everything here. It also washed ashore some strange objects. There's poison inside.
There's poison inside. It's not empty.
If it's left like that, eventually it will break open and its contents spread.
No one see the ship that threw that?
No one. But there were no coast guards in Somalia to keep an eye on such things. Anybody can come and just dump whatever they want. There are sturdy hooks on both sides of the barrel where they can be lifted by a crane and so more easily thrown overboard. There are many sick people in the village. Those with diarrhea, eye infections, migraines. Some people came by one day, but they just covered up the barrel with glass fiber and then left. In 2006, while conditions were still safe enough, an NGO inspected some of the containers. They found more than 40. Some were full, others had been broken by the waves and their contents spilt into the sea. The members of the NGO did not open the barrels. They wrapped them in protective covering to prevent any further leaks. Their chemical and radioactive protective clothing scared the wits out of the locals. An internationally recognized German toxic waste expert led the mission.
I have seen thousands of toxic waste barrels around the world during the last 20 years. I have never seen this kind of dumping. No, we tried to find some engravements, you know, numbers, names of companies, nothing.
Nobody wanted to look inside. They were scared. They might die. Nobody dared open the barrel.
You could not open them.
No, you can do that, but then you would have to have precautionary measures, and you would have to have containments to contain them and to dispose of them. So we didn't dare to do that. These big tanks were obviously filled with something we don't know, and closed, carefully closed by welding.
Heading south, we reached the Somali pirate stronghold of Hoboyo. As we get closer, our guides become increasingly nervous.
Pirates?
Yeah.
We can film only through the tinted windows. Each car we cross belongs to a gang.
They cannot go out of the car here.
Yeah, because the guy is old, you know, they are this area, you know.
This is pirate area.
Yeah.
Piracy is the only real livelihood in Hoboyo. The fishermen no longer fish, and just about everyone here relies on the criminals for survival. Our meeting is with the Council of Village Chiefs. They appear uncertain, fearing we might be spies. But they agree to be interviewed once they understood we were investigating the toxic waste. They say they had seen thousands of dead fish strewn along the shoreline. The fish were killed by the barrels that were leaking. That's what's killed them. Even the color of the water changed. When anyone went into the sea, they soon developed skin problems.
So what do you do when your fish disappears from the sea, and what are your options?
Before, about 3/4 of the people here lived from fishing. Nowadays, it's barely 1 in 20. Some have turned to piracy, others have nothing. In Lebed, some babies have been born with defects or they're very sick. We're very angry, but what can we do? We don't have the means. The ship is anchored off Hoboyo. It's a Korean supertanker the pirates seized several months earlier. We asked the village elders whether we could talk to one of the pirates. Like many of the others, he's a former fisherman, now forced into piracy. I became a pirate because of all the foreign ships that have been destroying our fish and livelihoods. That's what really made us become pirates. We get financial backing from some people and then we go looking for ships to capture.
And toxic waste played a role in this decision?
Of course. For 300 miles around here, there's toxic waste that's still smoking. Anyone who gets too close will pass out.
Aren't you afraid of dying?
What kind of life do you think I have now? Everything I had is gone. It's time to leave. Staying longer could be dangerous. But something's not quite right. The barrels exist, obviously, because we've seen them. But the toxic waste story could be a smokescreen for criminal activity. Why has no one actually tried to find out what the barrels really contain? And what has been the real impact on the local population? There is, it appears, a Somali government after all. 800 kilometers away, Mogadishu, the capital, is our next destination. The city is divided into two. The north belongs to the Islamists, the Shabab, an offshoot of Al-Qaeda. Various poorly paid militias, but who effectively are the government, hold the southern part, including the airport. Mogadishu is little more than a rotting carcass, devastated by more than 20 years of war. Only one main road now leads to the airport and is often under Al-Qaeda attack. The front line is just over there, less than 300 meters away. But the whole country is effectively a front line. Any outing has to be meticulously prepared.
Okay.
Mogadishu has been forgotten by the outside world. Only the Ugandan soldiers from the African Union are preventing the Islamists from advancing. Every car is treated with caution, ours being no exception. They fire into the air, forcing us to stop, even though it's best to keep on the move. This is the only relatively secure spot in Mogadishu, a bunker known as Villa Somalia. Hunkered down inside is the official government of Somalia, or at least what's left of it. The deputy prime minister is in charge of Somalia's coastline. However, he's unable to leave his office. All he can do is store and update the photographs he's frequently been sent.
This is the fisherman who actually told us the first day that this container has been driven out from the water.
When did those barrels come out?
3 years ago.
3 years ago. So they keep coming from the sea again
from
and
the sea,
again.
again and again.
Yeah.
So you see it.
Yeah. And is there anyone who looked what was inside?
Yeah, we sent some from the UN, but they never been actually close to it.
Why?
I don't know.
Can we go to this area?
Well, you want to see it there?
Yeah.
It's in Marek. I don't know whether they can take you there. It's a Haradera close to that area, vicinity of the Shabab area, you know.
So it's insurgency.
No, I'm not advising you to go there.
We head to Mogadishu's hospital. We've been told about small children with strange deformities. Among all the victims of the fighting, it's a phenomenon that's been ignored, but it's devastating. In the children's ward, the director wages a daily struggle to save the young lives, victims of war or congenital disease, and children with cancer.
There's nothing you can do here in the hospital. You have nothing.
It's at the hospital. You can't do anything, no. Because you need is chemotherapy, radiotherapy, and this is not. You haven't able to do that.
So basically, those children we see, they are
There are
condemned.
no hope. Yeah, that's what.
The Somali doctors have been struggling for several years to deal with an outbreak of genetic deformations of the genitals, the bladder, and the urinary canal. The deformations are symptomatic of exposure to dangerous pollutants.
So, okay, that's the only way you can pee.
Yes, he urinates through his leg. The two holes are identical. They can't operate, and it's difficult for her to pass water. It's very painful. He has trouble urinating. He can only do a few drops at a time. It takes 20 minutes to finish. The urine comes out through a hole next to his wee-wee. He was born with a deformation of the face, and he has a ball in his urinary system that prevents him from urinating.
We haven't any hints for that because we haven't done any researches or something like that.
For the last 20 years, do you have any ideas of figures?
We can say threefold is increasing
Threefold increase for the last 20
for
years
the last 20 years.
in this hospital.
In this hospital, yes.
They said they couldn't do anything for her in the hospital. Well, he was born like that. It's the will of God.
We need to find out and to do diagnostic method. We need, but we haven't.
So for you, right now, it's very mysterious.
Yeah, we haven't any laboratories or something like that to confirm the toxicology or something like that. That's why we haven't any investigation.
So they just abandoned.
Yeah, just abandoned. Yeah.
It's a big fear among the Somali people.
Oh
this
yes,
toxic waste
yes,
thing.
yes, very big fear. I'm actually the person in charge of the sea now. It's my natural resource what's going to be wasted. And at the same time, I don't have any single boat. What can you do now? Tell me.
An inexplicable epidemic of genetic deformations that coincided with the start of the war. The cause remains unknown, no medical inquiry, just fear. And the belief that's as widespread as it is unverifiable that foreigners came to dump poison in the country. While it was still possible to move around, one young Italian journalist did try and investigate. By March 1994, the militias were all powerful. Italian and US forces were getting ready to leave. Journalist Ilaria Alpi was covering their withdrawal. She wants to get to know Somalia, unravel its secrets. She's everywhere at once, with the victims of war, or interviewing the then President Ali Mahdi, the ally of the Americans. If indeed there are just a few square kilometers that haven't been pacified, how come the most powerful army in the world hasn't been able to pacify them? That's hard to understand. They must have a strategy. Her drive and persistence leads Ilaria Alpi to uncover a completely different story. Fishing boats, part of an Italian government aid program aimed at developing the fishing industry. The boats were provided by a company called Shifco, but Shifco's boats don't seem to have done much fishing. They sail backwards and forwards between Europe and Africa. In Somalia, they're controlled by an armed militia. Ilaria suspects whatever they're carrying, it isn't fish.
In occasione del suo ultimo viaggio a Mogadishu, Ilaria Alpi ha incontrato una cittadina.
On her last trip to Mogadishu, Ilaria met with a Somali national who mentioned the traffic in toxic waste. She decided to check the story in the town of Bosaso.
Che era sua intenzione di andare a Bosaso per fare alcune verifiche su questo punto.
It was in Bosaso that the journalist met with one of the leaders of an armed militia. This was to be her last interview. Where is the boat? Can I see it? Well, why do you want to see it for? Are you a spy or something? Just use the information, that's all. If I don't see it, I can't report it. Oh, right, so you won't believe it until you see it. Well, use a satellite then. Within hours of the interview, Ilaria Alpi and her cameraman are murdered in the streets of Mogadishu. The car in which they were traveling was machine gunned by an armed gang that immediately fled. Italy is in shock. Why is Ilaria Alpi dead? It's a question that has still not been answered. One of her friends at Italian public TV has the last video Ilaria filmed. He has watched the images almost frame by frame and believes he knows why she died. He claims her questioning of what was being transported by the ships owned by Shifco proved fatal.
Difficult to find him because he was a womanizer. Okay? Ilaria fa questa intervista con questo signore che
Ilaria interviewed this man who was a Somali warlord. And at one point, he becomes very cagey about answering her question about the boats.
Quando Ilaria si informa su una nave.
E dov'è la nave?
Where is the boat? Can I see it? Why do you want to see it? What are you, a spy or something?
Il SISMI è l'organizzazione segreta italiana. E poi l'intervista si interrompe.
And then the interview is interrupted here. And then when it begins again, they're talking about something that came from Milan or Brescia and Turin.
Milano, da Brescia, da Torino.
It was from Rome, Brescia and Turin.
E non sono città di mare.
Now, you see, these aren't port cities, so they weren't talking about fish. Don't you think it's important we know what it is? I've watched the tape 1,000 times, and I realize there's a cut here, in the interview.
Invece non crede che sarebbe importante che si sapesse che c'è questa.
The warlord asks the cameraman to stop filming just as Ilaria is insisting on being told what is on board the boats.
Questo ti fa pensare che parlasse.
And it seems that they then spoke of something else, and my theory is it was either about weapons or waste, or maybe both.
O tutti e due.
In Italy, Ilaria Alpi's murder will spark dozens of investigations. Magistrates, members of parliament, police and journalists will closely examine anyone who's doing business in Somalia. They uncover the illegal traffic of toxic waste. Today's economies produce millions of tons of dangerous waste every day. Chemical, heavy metals, radioactive. The more dangerous the waste, the more expensive it is to destroy. As a result, the unscrupulous offer a cheaper alternative: to dump the waste in the third world. It's completely illegal. Italian justice will expose one of these rings. Not the only one and definitely not the biggest. but probably the most clumsy. There are 4 people involved. The former honorary Somali consul, Ezio Scaglione. Guido Garelli, an expert in toxic waste. There's Giancarlo Marocchino, in the freight business and a key contact for the Italian army in Mogadishu. And the 4th man in the network is none other than the then president of Somalia, Ali Mahdi. In 1995, it's former President Mahdi himself who appoints Ezio Scaglione honorary consul. Scaglione will make full use of his diplomatic status to set up the toxic waste scam. He ignores the fact that a 1993 international treaty forbids the export of dangerous waste materials from Europe to the Third World. Scaglione undertakes a tour of northern Italian industrial complexes. He goes door to door like a common salesman to any industry that needs to rid itself of toxic waste. Destruction is expensive, and he offers to do the job on the cheap. Among the industrialists Scaglione calls on is this man, a scrap metal merchant from the Turin region, who agrees to be interviewed if we guarantee anonymity.
Donc ils cherchaient des gens qui avaient des déchets.
So they were looking for people who had waste to get rid of.
Okay.
Yes, their problem was that they had to look for quite a few in order to fill their ship. And how many tons could be loaded onto the ship? I don't know the exact details of the ship, but it must have been at least 10,000 tons. At $100 a ton, a single load can bring in $1 million, a substantial profit. But Scaglione raises so much dust in his rounds of industry that he begins to draw the attention of the authorities. One businessman would report the Somali honorary consul, and investigators decide to bug one of their meetings. Here are some of the recordings. I'm authorized to stock unsafe waste in this area. They've given the okay for other types of waste too. Sorry, but do you mean metal waste? No, I'm talking about other kinds of waste. Oh, right. But for now, we're just dealing with harmful types of waste. A judge in the northern Italian town of Asti leads the inquiry. He authorizes the phone tapping over several months of suspected members of the network. Scaglione's role was to collect the waste. That's what he himself told the industrialists that he met. He also said that what he was doing was entirely legal. However, the point was that at the time, Somalia was a country that couldn't legally import such sorts of waste, whatever documentation he provided. These days, Scaglione is no longer a Somali honorary consul. He's associated with Masonic and Templar organizations and is the self-proclaimed head of a phantom state, Navaza, a tiny island off the coast of Haiti. It effectively exists only on the internet. The interview with the self-styled Prince of Navaza focuses on his diplomatic career. If your country is recognized and you become the head of state, then you'd have diplomatic immunity. Yes, as would any head of state. You've held a diplomatic post, haven't you? Yes, but that was a long time ago. You were Somali honorary consul. For 4 years, yes. And it was the president himself who appointed you. Yes. And who was the president in those days? It was Ali Mahdi. So he made you a Somali honorary consul. Yes, but that's got nothing to do with Navaza, though. Now, there are some people who say that you use this diplomatic role to bring toxic waste into Somalia.
Toxiques en Somalie. Est-ce que vous
Is that
confirmez
true?
ou vous affirmez?
I have no idea what you're talking about. Absolutely none. Oh, so you just don't want to talk about it, or you don't know what I'm talking about? I'm sticking to what I said at the start, and I'm not going to move from that. So you don't want to talk about it.
Per cui le dico, su Navazza sì.
But as I said, I can talk to you about Navaza, but that's all. So you don't want to drag up past activities, only your present role.
Objectif avec votre passé.
Chiaramente.
Of course. The Prince of Navaza will reveal nothing further. His business partner at the time was Giancarlo Marocchino, a shipping agent. He controlled the port in the north of Mogadishu. At the time, Marocchino had been living in Somalia for more than 10 years. He knew the warlords, was an informer for the Italian army, had won several construction contracts, and peddled favors and influence. It was Marocchino who provided the access to Ali Mahdi, the Somali president. He claimed he could get presidential authorization to import toxic waste. On the phone, he urged Scaglione the need to act with guile.
Tramite operatore non è possibile farlo da Somalia, non c'è nessun genere di collegamento, devi farlo con questi numeri qua che sono 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 numeri.
For his part, Scaglione feared the conversation was being recorded. I need to make it seem that what we're doing is building an incinerator. Yeah, of course, I understand. And we need to appear to be doing this for the benefit of the country, as a means of generating energy. Of course, that goes without saying. It's obvious. We need to take that approach to avoid problems, because if a journalist were to discover this, then they'd use it to accuse us of... No, stop, not on the phone, Okay, boss. After hesitating for a long time, Giancarlo Marocchino finally agreed to meet with us. To avoid talking out of turn, he's brought his lawyer along. While they can't deny the audio recordings, they put a completely different spin on the evidence. He was Somalia's honorary counsel, after all.
Console onorario della Somalia, Scaglione.
Era console onorario della Somalia.
He was honorary consul. It was a meaningless title. It's only valid in Piedmont. He used it to make a bit of money. They created a network to export toxic waste to Somalia, though. No, there was no network. There was talk. Yes, I'll do this, you send that. There was a lot of that kind of thing. But let me tell you, it was just to make a bit of money. It was like a fraud, a scheme. We'd take the money up front and then say, sorry, I couldn't do anything, the material couldn't be shipped, or we'd figure out some kind of excuse. It's like a scam. The way it works is, I offer to do something for you, you pay me in advance to do it, but in the end it doesn't work out, and in the meantime I've made 20 or 30,000. The Italian judicial inquiry establishes the same president of Somalia, Ali Mahdi, was to receive his share, 35% of the profits. Today, Ali Mahdi is no longer president of Somalia. He lives in Nairobi, the comfortable capital of Kenya, and refuses to speak to journalists. He does, however, insist that the evidence implicating him is false. And yet it was the official authorization issued from the presidential office in 1996 that finally permitted the import of dangerous and toxic waste. Ezio Scaglione received the approval, and the operation seems to have been set in stone. Guido Garelli is an adventurer, half Serb, half Italian, with an array of passports and identities. His name figures on several documents involving the shipment of toxic waste to Africa. He's also spent about a dozen years in prison. He was another who enjoyed the confidence of the Somali president and participated in some of the network's activities.
Combien de fois vous êtes allé en
How often did you visit Somalia?
Une dizaine de fois.
About 10 times.
Vous avez eu des contacts?
Do you have any dealings with Ali Mahdi?
C'est
Yes, quite a few.
assez important, oui.
C'est Ali Mahdi qui a autorisé.
Was he the one who authorized the toxic waste to be sent to
Les
Somalia?
déchets toxiques en Somalie.
No, I don't think it was him. The authorizations were verbal.
L'autorisation était autorisation verbale. La décrit.
But there is a document.
Non, le fameux document.
Oh, that, the famous document. No, what's a fake then?
Oui, oui.
No, it's not a fake, exactly, the document. It's just badly worded. Very badly worded.
È mal concepito, è stato un documento assolutamente mal concepito.
And yet in his dealings with Italian businessmen, Scaglione claims to have the full backing of the Somali president, including for the shipment of radioactive waste, the most dangerous of all. As for the radioactive waste, I've already said I have verbal authorization, which doesn't count for much, but it does show they're willing to consider it. But is there any organization down there that would control all of this on the ground? The president is the one who checks this stuff. So he's the boss. Oh yes, really. The value of the authorization is that it comes from the highest source. It's certainly the audio recording that most embarrasses the network.
Si vous lisez bien l'écoute,
if you listen to it, you realize it's the entrepreneur who makes the proposal, not Scaglione.
C'est l'entrepreneur qui propose à Scaglione.
But Scaglione doesn't exactly refuse it.
Il dit, je peux peut-être faire quelque chose.
Precisely. It was a mistake. It's not a mistake. A mistake is when you get it wrong. He's using his position as honorary consul to deal in the traffic of radioactive waste. Yes, but it's a mistake. Faced with the damning evidence of the recordings, the honorary consul decides to spill the beans and betrays his former associate, Marocchino. He says Marocchino planned to hide the radioactive waste in huge containers, such as this one. Containers that were to be buried in the jetty of a port he was building in North Mogadishu. Italian justice, in evidence, used amateur photos showing metal containers buried in the concrete. Were they full of radioactive material, as Scaglione claims? Today, the port is out of bounds. It's in the hands of Al-Qaeda's Islamist militias. It's all lies. He had some serious problems. I'm not sure, but maybe someone told him, if you confess to this, we can help you.
Dici queste cose e noi ti salviamo di questi problemi. Io non lo so.
After all, a ship that arrives fully laden with waste off the coast of Somalia, what's it going to do? Enter a port? Offload the barrels? And the barrels would just be dumped at sea and that's it. So where's the problem? Huge amounts of waste arrived in Somalia.
Épouvantable. Sont arrivés.
What kind of waste? All kinds. All kinds. I'm sticking my neck out here, but I doubt a single barrel of waste ever made it to Mogadishu. And what about elsewhere? Maybe further north, I don't know. On the day Ilaria Alpi and her cameraman were killed in Mogadishu, a white man, an Italian, was the first on the scene. He seems to know more about it than the others. His name is Giancarlo Marocchino. They were each shot in the head 3 or 4 times. And there's nothing that could be done for them? Nothing. and you have their possessions here. They weren't out to steal them. It appears that they went somewhere where they shouldn't have gone. But can you see any reason why they should have been attacked in this haphazard way? Maybe we'll find out later, but there has to be a reason. Political? I don't know. You don't think it was an accident?
Così, tanto per far vedere che si creano incidenti.
No, this was a premeditated ambush. Premeditated? Yeah.
Io arrivo, sangue caldo.
I arrived right afterwards. There was a lot of confusion.
Io mi sembrava.
I thought it was a planned ambush because the car had been machine gunned. There were 9 bullets.
Io ho anche detto,
and I said to myself, they should never have been in this place. Then what I said and how they got to be there, well, my conscience is clear. Questions about the Alpi murder bring the interview to an end. Why? That's enough. Why are you asking these questions? No one has ever been charged with the murder of Ilaria Alpi. Never. Nor for trafficking waste. Italian investigators determined a Somali citizen was guilty of the journalist's murder. He has always proclaimed his innocence, and many believe the case still unresolved. Any evidence from the phone tapping of Scaglione's network has been thrown out as invalid. None of the 3 men will be disturbed, as Italy's magistrates have never sent a team to the field to investigate and check the facts. It's something that comes as no surprise to this journalist who has been following the case for many years.
Tutte le volte, almeno in Italia,
in Italy, each time we get close to identifying someone, establishing the facts about the traffic of waste material, there always seems to be something intervenes and that prevents the truth from being revealed. Italy has a political system that closes its eyes or looks elsewhere. Every time we've tried to introduce tough new laws, it's never succeeded. In a village not far from Milan lives someone who changed his mind about the toxic waste trade and exposed a gang that was preparing such an operation in Africa. He's since retired from all activity and lives in a street where nobody asks questions. But for many years, Sebri's job involved dumping poison into the poorest countries of the world.
Est-ce que finalement le trafic de déchets pour
Does the traffic in waste benefit from a war situation?
de pays en guerre?
È meglio, c'è più facilitato, no?
Ideally, yes, it makes things easier.
Che brutto discorso questo.
It's a cynical thing to say, but it's true. We've already filled half of Italy. Imagine an old map of the world with little flags. Well, Italy is full.
Da Napoli in giù è piena.
Naples is sinking.
Di rifiuti. Cosa ci manca?
So what's still missing?
Qual è?
Africa.
Dove vado in Africa?
And whereabouts in Africa?
Vado in Africa
wherever
dove
there are
ci sono
serious problems or
dove
poverty.
c'è maggior povertà. Vedesi Haiti.
So what have you got? You got Haiti and Somalia, places where political problems are particularly
È
bad.
solamente un problema
You see, it's just business.
e basta.
Human life has no relevance whatsoever.
Non conta.
Then one day in Haiti, where he had dumped some particularly dangerous waste, Sebri witnessed a scene that would haunt him forever.
Il mio problema è scaricare una nave ferma in un porto.
My job was to unload the ship. I was stuck, and being in port was costing about 2 million lira a day. which is a lot of money.
Prima la scarico e meglio è.
The faster I can offload, the better it is.
Scaricare immediatamente. Allora,
In Haiti, I unloaded the containers using a crane. Just like that, one on top of the other. I'm throwing them out one after another, and they're piling up anywhere. But I don't care. Then 2 weeks later, I could see the results. It was awful. It was radioactive waste, you see. And in Port-au-Prince, there was just one hospital at the time. And there were at least 50 people lining up to get in. It still gives me goosebumps to think about it. There were women and kids. The kids had like these blisters full of liquid, and the women's hair was falling out. The women were losing blood from, I'm sorry, but from all of their orifices. Can you understand? Nobody cares. I unloaded, I was paid, end of story. Who cares about human life? In 1998, Sebri decides to inform the powers that be about what he's involved in.
Decido di parlare con la magistratura.
After Ilaria Alpi's death, her murder I mean, I decided to have a talk with the authorities. Sebri collaborates with the organized crime brigade of the Milan police. As a result, the authorities managed to infiltrate a policeman with a hidden microphone inside one of the networks. Sebri introduces him as a businessman who deals with toxic waste. The policeman himself coordinates the operation. It was an unexpected break.
Usually
the police arrive after the crime has been committed, but this time we were able to follow events as they unfolded.
Investigare nel tempo.
For 3 years, the police record every meeting and phone call. The transcripts were made available. Their international scope makes for fascinating reading. In globalization's grey area, well-established and respected businessmen rub shoulders with gangsters. It also pays not to be sentimental in this business. A certain Luigi sets the tone. Down there, it's just Negroes who have to eat up the waste. They take it and eat it. Mozambique's the poorest country in the world. You know what I'm saying? Some network members have excellent relations with the president of Mozambique's inner circle. One official has told them where they can bury some dangerous waste. It's this hole, near the capital, with a capacity of 10 million cubic meters of toxic waste. Now they have a hole just for them. The traffickers set about finding the waste material to fill it with. To this end, they contact an Italo-American businessman, Nicholas Bizio. Bizio tries to work the legal side of the business. He also knows companies and institutions interested in getting rid of toxic waste.
Nicholas Bizio
would take care of contacts in the United States. With US companies? The big companies, yes. But the State Department is not very far. Oh, that high up, huh? Oh, yes, sure. We're talking about sensitive waste. You follow me? Hello, I'd like to speak to Nicholas Bizio, please. Speaking. Well, your point of view is certainly very different to those we've heard so far, and that's why we're calling you. Yes, but I've got nothing to do with any of that. I don't mind speaking to you. Everything they've told you about me, though, is not true. The investigation shows that Bizio's role is that he knew the system inside out. It's true that for a time I was trying to get rid of the stuff, but legally. However, we faced a brick wall, so we stopped.
Donc vos projets n'ont pas...
So, okay, so the project never worked out.
Vous avez décidé de ne pas...
Yes, yes.
D'accord. OK.
Yes, and we can prove that.
Il documento certificava
Now, their document stated all was above board.
ma la realtà
But the meetings and the tapped phone calls showed they knew that they were doing something illegal.
che stavano commettendo qualcosa di illegale.
The crime ring centers on international crime celebrities. Police discover the network includes a certain Monza al-Qassar.
Beh, sinceramente lo spessore del personaggio...
Well, we were surprised, to be honest, that someone like him was involved. I mean, al-Qassar. The man's reputation meant we knew of him, of course, and he's well known around the world, too. For trafficking weapons? Yes, weapons and other stuff. The flamboyant Syrian sells weapons to everyone from extreme right-wing Latin American groups on behalf of the Americans to the Iraqis and Palestinians. And he's the main investor in the Mozambique operation. On the wiretaps, Luigi praises Al-Qassar. Al-Qassar lives in Spain. They provide the boats, you see. They traffic in arms, take the ship and the waste and dump it in Mozambique. These are serious people. Bizio, fearing the phone could be tapped, warns his partners. You'd have to be crazy to talk about that over the phone. According to a UN Security Council inquiry, it appears Al-Qassar has also sold weapons to the various armed militia in Somalia. The weapons were shipped in boats, belonging to the infamous Shifco company, in which Ilaria Alpi had expressed such an interest, just before she was killed. 10 years later, UN experts confirmed the young journalist's suspicions. Shifco's boats were not used for fishing, but for arms trafficking, and probably toxic waste, too.
The
way they paid off these militias, who were very poor, was to offer them weapons in exchange for dumping the toxic waste. It was a win-win situation for them. Well, the bargain was pretty much always the same. You owe us some big holds, and we'll pay you with weapons or money and help. After 3 years, the organized crime squad decides to end the underground operation, judging it too risky.
A un certo momento...
Well, at a certain point, the investigators had to say stop, because given the nature of those involved, they needed to protect the police mole.
La sicurezza degli operatori di polizia, soprattutto.
Through leaked information, the crime ring will discover it had been spied on. The Mozambique project is abandoned, and the ships never leave. Investigators close the files, and the case is dismissed. The magistrate turns down our request for an interview.
La paura peggiore è stata quando è stata archiviata.
I was scared, really scared, when I realized the investigation was to be dropped. I was like a fish out of water, struggling to breathe. I was attacked from all sides. Someone even sent 2 9mm bullets to my home, and there were anonymous phone calls. So I decided to reveal all. But the scariest part was that the whole truth had not come out. Sebri talks to the media, a lot and without weighing up his words. Nicolas Bizio has him condemned for defamation. In 2009, the US arrests armed dealer Al-Qassar, who was a principal financier of the toxic waste operation. He thought he was selling arms to Colombian guerrillas who turned out to be federal agents. Al-Qassar is sentenced to 30 years and is serving his time in Sing Sing. Bizio, in the meantime, has settled into comfortable retirement in the charming Swiss town of Lugano, from where he still conducts some business. In an email, Bizio denies ever meeting or indeed even knowing Al-Qassar. Before venturing into piracy, the Somali gangs had proclaimed themselves the nation's coast guards. Their stated aim was to protect their seas and shoreline from toxic waste and illegal fishing. These days, they're just pirates. Yet the fishermen who live alongside them every day defend their actions. They have a different notion of what piracy represents. There are two types of pirates. The small ones, who attack ships to simply survive. And then there are the others, who are the real pirates, in our opinion. They're the ones who empty our sea of fish and pollute it with their chemical waste. Anyone can understand that. If we pour poison where you live, and there's no government to protect you, and the foreigners attack you, then yes, you do take up arms. A flotilla of Western warships currently patrols the waters off Somalia, hunting the pirates. Several dozen have already been captured. To date, none of the industrialists suspected of dumping toxic waste on East Africa's beaches have ever even been bothered by investigators.